I'm here. Can you hear me?
We can. Do you need, do you have a deck that you need to let us give you control?
Yeah, if you don't mind, that'd be great. I can share my screen.
I think Stephanie will give that to you and we'll let you take it away from here. Lanessa is with the Lennox Group, and if I understand your role correctly, you're involved in see a lot of people don't understand that you can't go buy a piece of air conditioning equipment from a store. Like, we can't just go to Home Depot, although I know we can, don't get me wrong. But usually you can't just walk out of Home Depot or Lowe's with this product. You have to go to a wholesale location, and
Right.
we use professionals. And you are, if I understand correctly, you're responsible across the whole United States for these stores. Am I on or off?
You are on, spot on. So, yeah, I'm the vice president of Lennox Stores. So we have a network of wholesale locations that sells to dealers and mechanical contractors across North America. So we're about just over 200 stores and continuing to grow. So I lead that store's organization's both sales efforts and the operational functions of the store. So I'm going to spend a little bit of time today. I think Howard set it up well. Our roller coaster ride really started in 2018. And we're hoping at some point we can get off the roller coaster and move back to some sort of standard business. So I'm going to talk about how we've planned, sometimes on the fly in the face of 300-year events. To set it up, though, I want to go really quickly over our strategy because we do have a different selling model than selling to a consumer. So we sell directly to our dealers or those mechanical contractors. So along that journey, we lead a world-class sales and marketing organization. We are an industry-leading omni-channel distributor. We consider ourselves to have, of course, a market-leading supply chain, which includes my stores. And then all of those stores and sales team sells industry-leading product. The important thing to talk about here is how our product actually makes it to market and ultimately into someone's home, because I think that will help you understand some of the challenges that we really faced from 2018 until now, which I'll talk about in a little bit more detail. So our product is dreamed up, researched, and developed in a facility in Carrollton, Texas. It then ultimately ends up in one of our manufacturing plants, which are in Marshalltown, Iowa, South Carolina, Saltillo, Mexico, Stone Mountain, Georgia, or Stuttgart, Arkansas. And so a lot of US-based manufacturing. It goes through one of our 30 distribution centers that are spread across the US and Canada, and then ultimately ends up in a Lennox store where our customers come to purchase the product and then install it in your home. So this is important to note because 3 of our 4 steps in our equipment journey have been significantly impacted by catastrophic events since 2018. So I'm going to talk through some of those events quickly, some of the pivots that we had to make as we dealt with those events, and then how really it affected our sales and stores teams. So the first thing that happened was in July of 2018. So go to January of 2018, we set our sales targets, we agree, we give our expectations, or our expectations are given to us from Wall Street. We kick off every year with a major sales and store manager meeting where we bring our teams together and really give them the energy and drive and direction for the next year. So 2018 was shaping up to be a record-breaking year for Lennox. Our performance was beating every metric we were given. Lots of visibility for us across the industry on performance. And then in July of 2018, our major residential factory in Marshalltown, Iowa, was virtually leveled by an EF3 tornado. So there were portions of the factory that were still functional, but obviously for safety reasons, we had an immediate halt to all of our production. The proudest thing here is that there was no injury or loss of life in our factory. And if you saw pictures of that factory, And if you Google it, it's all over the place. It is amazing that no one got hurt. But for us, it was an immediate halt to our production. Our Marshalltown facility produces all of our higher end residential product. And we pride ourselves on long-standing relationships with our dealers, specifically dealers who have committed to selling that higher tier product for a number of years. So that factory, we had been building product in that factory for 100+ years. And our CEO immediately made the commitment to rebuild there. A lot of that community is built around our factory. So we made the commitment to rebuild there. But what we faced with that, obviously, was some major factory productivity issues. So I'll talk in a minute about the communication, both internally and externally, that we were challenged with, and how we kind of overcame some of that. And then we really started, so factory gets rebuilt, we send production to other factories where we can. We immediately pivot and do some SKU rationalization and reduction. So where we are producing, we're producing the product that's most needed. And we're in the middle of July in the air conditioning business, if you guys can imagine, is a pretty busy time for us. So thankfully, we had a significant amount of inventory on hand as we were in the middle of our summer selling season. So we had some time to adjust and to pivot. But then as soon as the factory got back up to production at some capacity, we started having conversations about share recapture. And when I talk about the communication and plan that we put in place with our customers in a minute, you'll understand why that share recapture was incredibly important to us. So we're well on our path. We feel like things are going to settle down. We moved through 2019 focused on share recapture. We set our plan for 2020 and really got no relief from the plan because 2019 was a rebuilding year. So the expectations for us were pretty high hopes for 2020. And then, of course, we all know what happened in March. So for us, when the COVID crisis hit, for our sales organization, we immediately took our sales team, similar to what Paige was speaking about, we immediately took our sales team off the street. They were working from home. They were not allowed to see their customers. On the store side of the business, which is the side I run, we were considered an essential business, which meant we never had to shut down. And because we were considered an essential business, we expected our employees to come to work in the face of COVID-19. So as a lot of America was shutting down, employees were adapting to working from home. We were adapting the message of health and safety for our employees and how do we keep them safe and continue to encourage them to show up at work every day to service our customers. So again, a bit of challenge for us there with health and safety. And then as COVID spread, we had another round of product flow concerns. I think Howard, prior to the break, talked about as soon as we could foresee what was going to happen, we assumed that we'd have a 20 to 30% reduction in demand. So we immediately right-sized the business, made production decisions that reduced our production capacity because we were anticipating in an economic crisis and uncertainty, we were anticipating that homeowners would reserve that discretionary funding and that they would repair versus replace. So we were set to sell as much parts as we needed to accommodate that repair. But what we saw were homeowners are working from home. They're in their homes 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, which has not been what's happened historically, and they were going to be comfortable in their homes. So we actually saw, to Howard's introduction, we actually saw a significant increase in demand that was unplanned. So again, we're facing product flow problems, and then how does this affect our customers and our level of customer service that we were able to, again, disappoint our customers. So, and then in August of 2020, and my icon here is kind of comical because none of us even knew what this was, but As we ramp production back up, we understand that demand, our decreased anticipation of demand was not what was realized. And so we start to ramp production back up. We have a derecho in Iowa. None of us had ever heard of a derecho before, but it's basically hurricane strength winds that happen on land. It is nothing that you can anticipate. You don't see it coming, and it swept across the Midwest. So Marshalltown over there on the left is Iowa. We have an Iowa derecho. This time the derecho affected both our factory and the distribution center that's directly across the street from the factory, trapping the days of supply that we had. So again, we have a product flow disruption that was critical to our business. So a lot of considerations that we had to make through the process pivoting. None of us had ever led, so 300-year events, this major tornado that happens, the COVID-19 crisis that we're still in the middle of today, and then the derecho. Obviously, none of us had ever led through a crisis like this before, but what we did learn is what we did in Marshalltown worked. We were able to salvage some of the relationships with our customers, and those that we couldn't, we were able to recapture those relationships. So let's take the same approach as we move through the COVID-19 crisis with our customers. COVID-19 entered in a whole new arena of the health and safety of your employees, and how do you pivot and keep people engaged in the business. So I'm going to talk through a little bit about the sales team considerations that we had to make along the way, starting with communication. So obviously, through all of these events, we had to have alignment on our targets, because when you have a disruption to product flow, your sales team don't have the product that they need to sell to hit their numbers that we would have laid out in January of any of these given years. Our stores team don't have the product, the finished goods inventory that they would typically sell to our customers. So we have to constantly realign targets based on where we thought the market was going and how much recovery we thought that we would have. And so while we were always paid our sales team on an annual basis, so they may have gotten monthly commissions, but it was all based on an annual target, we had to pivot and change targets to, after the tornado, it was almost monthly. And after COVID, we went to a quarterly target with a reduced annual quota. So a lot of internal target alignment, people making sure they understand how it affects their comp plans. Our sales team works on commission. My stores team works on a salary plus a bonus that's all driven by sales metrics. So we also had a good bit of external customer communication that had to happen. And one of the hardest things that we had to do after the Marshalltown tornado, because if you'll recall, I said Marshalltown tornado, we produced our highest tiered equipment in Marshalltown. Our most loyal dealers who have been with us, some of them for 75, 80 years, our most loyal dealers purchased our higher end equipment. And we had to be transparent with them after the Marshalltown tornado and basically tell them to keep their business running. We understood if they had to go and purchase product from our competition because we had a interruption in our supply, and we didn't want that to affect the livelihood of their business, of their employees, of their families. So we had to be very transparent in both production, capability and capacity, and what does the long-term outlook look like. And what we learned is over communication, both internally and externally, wins. The more you tell them, the more you repeat your message, the more they feel like you're connected to them. So to Paige's point, reaching out to our customers, hey, how are you doing? Know that when this is over, we want our relationship to be as strong or stronger than it was when this began. And so we use that same communication protocol when we started moving through the COVID crisis, and then when we had the interruption in supply as it related to the derecho. And so in wrapping up, target adjustments because of product flow disruption, our new business direction. So every year we have a very strong focus on new business and how do we continue to fill that funnel with new business opportunities. And we basically, for 3 years in a row, have had to put new business. We have started and stopped in regards to new business. And I say that because at the beginning of every year, we feel like we're in a great position. We challenge our sales team to go out and get new business. And then we have to pull back because we have to support those customers who have been the most loyal to us for the longest, because those are the customers that are going to allow us to recapture our share at the end of each one of these events. So our new business direction had to change significantly over time. We're hoping in 2021 we don't have any of these disruptions, so we can go back out and turn that new business funnel back on. And then for me on the store side, we really had a modified business plan. Our stores rely on customers to walk in and purchase equipment. And when they purchase equipment, they do add-on for their installs. So they might buy the thermostat, they might buy tape, they might buy HVAC specific installation items. We closed our showrooms completely in March as a result of not having PPE in place, not having procedures and protocols to deal with a pandemic. We closed the showrooms and went to a drive-through service only. So think curbside pickup for HVAC. And with this, our model drastically changed because we didn't get that add-on business. We weren't consistently increasing our average order value, which is the direction of our team. So we really had modified business plan that we've pivoted on multiple times throughout 2020. So 3 years, 2018, 2019, and 2020, of quite a lot of disruption. We are still, we are hitting numbers out of the park. We have pivoted and been successful. Our sales team is successful, but a lot of continuity planning, a lot of learning lessons from mistakes that we made during the tornado. How does that translate to new activity with COVID-19 and the derecho? And I think on the flip side, as a leadership team, we look back and the last 2.5 years have been an incredible journey for us. We've learned a lot, and we hope that we don't have to use it in 2021, if that's fair to say. So Howard, that's it for me. I don't know if any questions came through. I'll stop sharing my screen now. And then if there's any questions, you can let me know.
Sorry, I'm going to watch the chat here. So what are some of the biggest lessons learned from what you did? I know it was kind of a roller coaster, and kind of what do you think? I mean, are you doing things the same at Lennox, or do you feel you've made some kind of tectonic shifts in the way that you think moving forward?
I mean, there's some considerable shifts, yeah, that we've had to make. Our sales team has learned to sell in a different capacity than they've ever sold before because they're selling virtually. We have been a face-to-face, shake your hand, spend time with you, get to know your family, get to know the people in your business type of B2B organization for quite some time. And we pulled our salespeople off the street in March. We gave them the opportunity, if they were comfortable, to start seeing customers with contact tracing sometime near the end of the summer. But we went through our major summer selling season not having any face-to-face interaction with our customers who, your sales team establishes relationships, they're friends, they're part of the family, and we prevented them from having that face-to-face relationship. So I will pivot back the other way, and at some point when it's safe and everyone feels comfortable, the sales team will go back to a face-to-face. But I think you've learned a lot. They've learned how to support their customers remotely. The customers have learned how to interact with us remotely. And then our whole business model on the store side has changed, and it will make us better in the long run because we'll be able to service our customers by a couple of different channels as opposed to just walk-in business. We now have drive-through. We've pushed business to e-commerce. So I think some of the pivots will be long-lasting.
Can you talk a little bit? I know Mike talked to me about this. When your facility first went down back in 2018, I know that your competitors were hey, so sorry to hear what's happening. They reached out and said, oh, how, and then they went and took your customers, right? So can you
Which any of us would do, right?
yeah, but can you kind of walk us through kind of that moment and what's it been like to have to claw back the customers?
Yeah. So unfortunately, the competitors were also very, very smart in the way that they handled that, meaning they went out and wrote multi-year deals with our customers. So yeah, we'll sell to you. We will engage on our high tier product with you, even though you haven't been a long time customer, but we're going to expect that you sign a long-term deal with us. And so a lot of our customers were forced into a position to keep their business going, that they signed deals that were a little bit longer than we had anticipated. And so that share recapture for us was really, how do you reestablish those relationships with those customers so that when that contractual deal is done, they come back to you. And you get exposed in those situations. Our customers had been so loyal to us that they had not compared us to our competition in terms of price and customer service and relationships. And so where we got exposed, we had some amends, I'd say, to make with some customers, but the sales team did a great job just staying engaged. We encourage our customers to go buy from our competition, and at the end, that was very appreciated by those customers. And we track our customers now by those that we've won back that were long-term, and we've been successful winning the majority of those customers back. Thankfully, on the flip side, COVID-19 created supply challenges through a lot of our competition because of COVID spreading in their factories. They've had factory shutdowns, which interrupted their supply. And so as our customers are coming back to us, I think we'll be able to keep them this time around.
So in many ways, it's interesting. You had to do business differently, and then they had to go down. And so it actually gave you the opening. I know that, Mike has talked to me about the story, so it's quite interesting to listen to it. Brian, do you want to ask your question live?
Sure. I was just curious, you were talking about setting targets earlier and how you had to pretty quickly align those. I was just curious how those conversations went from a senior leadership perspective. I mean, were you getting pushback on that, or were they clearly aware of the reality and just rolled with it?
Yeah, thankfully, our CEO actually went to Wall Street and adjusted expectations right away. And so we used that direction to trickle down adjustments through the organization. So we didn't get a lot of pushback because everyone was really in line with what our adjusted financial plan was. I think the pushback really came from the sales team understanding how we determine the adjustments and moving them from an annual to a quarterly. What does that really mean for them, and what does that mean long term? They just want some consistency in the way they're being paid, and we're making adjustments to be fair, but that drives some inconsistency in their mind. So I think the pushback actually came from the people that were getting the adjustments, not from the senior leadership team, only because our financial plan was also adjusted.
So are there any other questions for either Lanessa or Paige before we switch over? I'm watching chat here for a minute or two. I think I don't know that we could have asked for two more amazing stories. Thank you both. I just, Lennox has been is our longest partner as a sales center. So in fact, my very first meeting that I had in the summer before I taught my first course was with Mike Hart over at his country club, at which he set the expectation on what he expected of me. And I'm sure Lanessa understands what I mean by that Mike is a very loyal and great leader, but he will tell you what he wants you to rise to a level. And I think he's a fascinating leader. And we want to thank Paige. I know that Paige and Mike had a conversation a little bit back, and Mike asked Paige if she'd join us today and be part of what we do. And so Paige, we really want to thank you as well for being part of this today, for telling the Texas Ranger story and the Globe Life Field story. You know, I think we all have a lot to learn from each other as we go through this. And that's what these summits are about when we have them, is to really tell the stories and then maybe learn from each other. And hopefully that we meet each other. When we're in a normal situation, we're actually at UT Dallas and we get to go into a break and get to meet each other. I'm not seeing any questions come in, so I'm going to thank Lanessa and Paige. I think you're making people think, my goodness, my life wasn't bad. I didn't have to deal with what you two had to deal with. My life wasn't nearly that bad. It wasn't Zoom either, so we've got some very extreme examples today. So what we've envisioned here is that